What's happening, financial coaches? Peter here. Hey, wanted to just talk about something that recently came up. One of the things that I work a lot on now are financial wellness, and I don't do as much financial coaching. I'm kind of trying to, create more programs and opportunities of financial wellness with coaching as a part of it. And yet, one of the things I do, like coming on here and talking about the financial coaching tactics and strategies, is that sometimes people reach out to me every now and then and say, hey, how can I become a better financial coach or build my business, or what does your model week look like? There are lots of things. And coming from financial services and financial advising, investment management, this is a conversation that often comes up. And I want to give you an example here, and I want to give you my suggestion is that we used to have these things called veteran days. So we'd bring in some of our financial advisor veterans and we would have them on a panel. And then we'd bring in all the newbies, people that have been there 3 years and under. And, you'd have a big you know, um, conference room or even one of these lecture halls. And you'd have all these people who are starting out, making 20, 30, 40, $50,000 a year. And then you'd have these veteran advisors who are making 500,000, 800,000, $1 million a year, that are very successful. I would say that easily 20 to 30 years in the industry was pretty typical of the people across the board. Some of these guys were making a few $100,000 after 4 or 5 years. That's totally possible too. But what the problem is that I saw, and I didn't really realize it at the time, it was more about when people were starting asking me these questions, is that they were asking, what does your model week look like? What do you do now, right? And the advisors, I'll circle this back around to coaches. Don't you worry. Would talk about, listen, I spend 35 hours a week working. I spend about 5 hours a week on marketing and calling and relationships and networking and stuff like that. And I spend about 25 hours in in-person meetings. And then I spend about 5 hours a week on personal development and business building and optimizing the practice and those types of things and managing my team and whatever. And those are all well and good, but what I see is that people start taking notes. Hey, this is what a successful practice looks like. And my problem with that is it's what the successful practice looks like now, right? It's what the practice looks like now, and that's not really what you want to model. What you want to know, and most people don't think about it, and most successful people don't like admitting it, is you want to model what they did when they were at your place. And so one of the things that I want to think about, and I'm just going to call him Joe as I anonymize everything, but he was a very successful advisor. He was very young. He was in his 20s. He was making about $500,000 a year. So I consider that very successful, 28 at the time. And he had started right out of college, right at about 21 or 22. And I knew him. I knew him when he started. And one of the things is, he had a nice office now. He had a membership at a country club. And when you would ask him what he did, he would talk about, hey, one week, I golf every week. And I take a foursome of clients or prospects. Or I take, a client of mine and ask him to invite two of his friends, right? And that's great. That's great. But should someone new start that? Because I knew Joe when he started. And what Joe did was hustle, hustle, hustle. He did not have an office. He actually found someone who would loan him his office. So he didn't have an actual office, but he was able to use that address. And if he had a meeting and people wanted to meet at that office, he was allowed to use it. And maybe he paid like $20 for the day or the hour that he would use it. But he wasn't a rent payer there. Right. And what he did is all day he called the people that were assigned to him or his prospects. Now, the phone calling rules were a little bit different at that time, but he would do that. And after that, if the people that he tried calling were not there, he started mapping them out. And this is funny. It used to be on a service called MapQuest. And he would drive this route home and knock on those doors. And he would go to every event on the weekends, every charity run, everything. He would basically be in the office by 9 a.m. every day, pounding the pavement, marketing, making calls, sending letters, and then spend the evenings knocking on doors, going to events, and really, really hustling. He was one of the biggest hustlers, and not in a bad word, not in a bad way. He was not hustling as in being unethical. He was just grinding it out and making it happen and putting in the hours. And to be honest, he was probably 2xing the amount of effort that most people were working. And if you looked at him versus other people his age, even people that worked decently hard, he was 2xing it, 7, 8 years later. And there's no surprise to me that he was doing that. But when people were asking what his day looked like now and talking about his staff and things like that and trying to model that, that would not have been a good indicator of how he built his business. That would not have been a good representation of what it took to get there. It would be a good representation. It's a snapshot of where he is, but none of that would exist if he hadn't spent the first 5 or 6 years building it up and slowly taking on a small office. He actually worked in a small office in the back of a restaurant. And I actually went to see his office, and it was very Spartan. And in many cases, he had artwork leaning up against the wall because he didn't have time to put the screws in the wall because he was just working his tail off. And good on him. He had built a career, and it's a career, and it's a business model that's probably going to last. But my point to this is that people have asked me sometimes about what my model week looks like. And if I have clients now that have used me for years and are used to me sending out an invoice if we work together or do something together, or are used to coming to me for work and advice and discussion and brainstorming, and they know how I work and we have that rapport, right? You can't assume that you're going to have that with new people, right? So I don't want people to base it off me because I'm evolving my practice. And like I said, I bring it up because I am doing less coaching now than I have ever done, but I am plugging that into a broader financial service, right? And so what I am doing is I am shifting, because of all the work that I have done on financial coaching and financial advising, into what I think is going to be more sustainable for me and easier to balance. And I don't want you to try to duplicate that now if you can't. I think most people need to figure out how to master the art of coaching, become really good financial experts, really help dispense advice, be able to build established credibility and rapport with clients, get a reputation, flex their muscle for people and really help them out, and start chalking up wins with clients, getting those testimonials and getting people to refer out, right? And all those things have to be built before you can start getting really strategic and saying, hey, I want to have a referral only practice. I've heard that from a lot of people who haven't sold anything yet. So those are great. I have no problems with you wanting to do that. But don't mimic what successful people are doing right now. Mimic what they've done when they were in the place that you are now, right? Because what you want to do is you want to take that point in time and then mimic that as best you can to get on the track that it can lead to, right? What you're seeing is a signal, a symbol, and a snapshot of where they are on this journey. And if that's the same journey you want, then great. You can mimic that along the way. And yes, things will change because of regulation and technology. And so you're going to have to find some analogs and kind of adapt and think about the new thing. But to be honest, if you find those people that are where you want to go, they might be able to help you and pull you along, maybe even refer you out, maybe outsource some work to you, maybe subcontract out to you, right? It may be a shorter journey for you with their help than just looking at them, observing them, and trying to take those lessons. So mimic what successful people have done, not what they're doing right now. That's my advice to you, especially as you're going out and meeting some people and asking, how they got their start. Now, here is the big reveal. Here is the reveal, and I think all of us struggle with it, is that I think we're kind of embarrassed about where we started. I do YouTube, I do a lot of things, and there's a saying that if you're not embarrassed by your original product, you shipped too late, right? We're all embarrassed sometimes by the things that we've done. We're all embarrassed by what we had to do to make our businesses survive, and not because it's, a reflection on us or our character or anything like that. But a lot of people want to have this image. It's kind of the Instagram society, and we want to have that success. We want to look like it. And so when you ask someone who is making a lot of money and driving the big cars and living in the big houses and living well and traveling in second homes and all this other thing, sometimes it can be very hard for them to really admit what they did. Sometimes they will say it in a very hushed voice. And another example, and I will call him Don, a very successful real estate developer. I was talking to him once and how he got successful and all the stuff and about building an enterprise and, owning the contractor service and the licensing and, the city planning and blah, blah, all this stuff, right? But when you really got to it, he would tell you some funny stories about him not having gas to get to meetings, not having gas in the car. And, this was years ago, but he told me that he siphoned gas, a gallon of gas out of a car that was parked on the street to put in his car so that he could get to a meeting to pitch a project. And I like that story, not because it's illegal or someone did something unethical, but it's because it's really hard for people who don't ever have to admit their vulnerabilities early on to admit some of those. And so, I'm not saying that that was good, and I'm certainly not saying it was good, but I get it. And I think the problem is when you talk to some of these people about how they really started, some of their recollection, when it comes to their memory, might be slightly glamorized. I'm not saying that they're going to manipulate it too much, and some might be very, very honest. But if some people say that they made cold calls from 5 to 7 at night, maybe it was from 3 p.m. to 10 p.m. It's very possible. Or if they say, and I knocked on a few doors, they may have knocked on doors for 5 hours a day for a month. I'm not sure, but just don't assume that what they're telling you is exactly what they did. They may have worked and hustled much harder. They have maybe made sacrifices that they have pushed out of their mind and forgotten. I think I've done it too, and sometimes because I think it's easier to start on some of these things now. I think some people don't have to do some of their stuff, but I get tired of people that say, "Listen, work smarter, not harder." Figure out the value and trust that things work out. And those are fine, but there's no problem in hustle and grinding. The people that add hustle and grind with working smarter and harder are the ones that are giving themselves the best odds. But if you only want to work smart and not hard, well, you might find success. But I tell you what, I'm pretty sure that the people who add in the other ingredients of hard work, of long hours, of sacrifices and compromise are going to expand their target range, are going to increase the probability of them hitting it over the people who are just like, yeah, I don't want to miss a baseball game. I don't want to miss, my weekends. I don't want to work late hours. I don't want to miss my TV show or whatever it might be, right? So I think the people that gloss over it might be selling you a bit of a story. So read between the lines a little bit. If people are going to be honest with you, great, but mimic what they've done, not what they're doing now. All right, that's my long-winded rant for today. I do hope it helps. If you have questions for me on this topic, I'm going to be really honest with you. I have been at the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows, and the lows probably more often, or at least they felt more often because they're more painful. And so I have been there where I didn't know where the next meal was going to come from, and I luckily had a strong network of friends when I couldn't wait on my parents to help me out, and I had a wonderful family who would always be willing to help me out. But sometimes transferring money wasn't that easy, and there were people who took me out to dinner. There was a time when I was essentially homeless, and I remember between friends and family, and I'll tell you what, one of my cousins, she had an extra room. She didn't have a huge place, but she's like, come live with me. And I tell you what, it was awesome. It was something that got me through some tough times, but it allowed me to continue to pursue some of the things that I wouldn't probably have had the bandwidth to be able to do without some of that help. So I'm eternally grateful for the people who have done some things for me that are nothing but charity. They weren't calculated investments. They were charity, right? And so that is part of everyone's story, I think, is that, if you want to rest on your own strengths and your own capabilities, sometimes you might find some success. But I think having a very strong network is really, really undervalued. And so I will be totally honest with you about what my journey was on that. And, some of those stories aren't going to be easy for me to share. But if you're going through a tough spot and there is light at the end of the tunnel, I would say let's figure out ways to keep moving forward, right? Let's figure out ways that you can keep going. But I would also say, as we say, fail fast. I have a number of failures under my belt. And I think one of the things that I want people to be hopefully self-aware of is that just pushing through, just continuing on is not necessarily the right thing. Maybe it's a pivot. Maybe it's a change of pace. Maybe it is a strategy that you're employing that isn't working, right? A lot of things work. So let's shotgun some more stuff. Let's throw some more stuff out there, some more spaghetti against the wall, and see what sticks. And maybe it's time to reinvent yourself or look for the next move or version 2.0. So anyway, that's it. I'll talk to you later. Thanks.